Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us for the media briefing on this Wednesday. We have four presenters for you today, and I know I had sent out an earlier schedule for us to begin with Rosemary Soto and our redistricting issue, but she has not yet joined on the call. So I'd like to go to our second presenter, Leanne Magowski, Director of Emergency Communications. Thanks for stepping in a little early, Leanne. And Leanne has got some really good information for our local businesses about 911 calls. Tell us more, Leanne.
Good afternoon, everyone. As Maya said, I'm the Emergency Communications Director for Monterey County. And what you may not be aware is the 911 Center here for Emergency Communications actually oversees all of the 911 calls for 11 of the 12 police departments, all of the fire departments excluding CAL FIRE. And we are passionate about making sure that we can get the right information from the callers to be able to provide help in an emergency. And one of the things that we have started to see an uptick in is a lot of businesses, large places where they have multi-line telephone systems have switched over to voice over IP telephone systems. Now, I might be having a lot of people here gloss over and because I'm using a lot of acronyms, but this is just a call out to all of those places that have multi-line telephone systems, that if you have switched to voice over IP, that you need to check with your internet or telephone subscriber to make sure that you're using voice over IP enhanced 911 calling. What's happened is there's some new regulations from the FCC to make it easier to call 911. Well, when things got easier, sometimes they get more complicated. And what's happening is these businesses are using VoIP basic emergency calling and not enhanced 911 calling. And when that happens, we are not able to get all of the information when that person calls 911 from that multi-line, multi-office situation. And it can create havoc for first responders, and it can create a delay in response of getting help. So with Maya's help, we have released a press release that goes into a lot more detail about this. This does only affect businesses, schools, hotels, places where there's multiple telephone lines. This does not affect your cell phone or your home phone. This is really just those business lines. We urge you to go ahead and check with your service provider if you have enhanced 911 calling. And if you do not, please have it switched. We, as your 911 center, cannot make that switch for you. Maya, is there anything else you think I'm missing there?
No, I think you covered it, and the press release will go out after the briefing is over. So everyone can expect that. And again, it also has a little bit more information about the FCC changes that this is all, and maybe you could explain how this is not something that's being done on purpose, but it's part of these changing requirements that VoIP operators are having to make some selections.
Thank you for that clarification. You know, back in the day, 10 years ago, we 911 officials were really making a plea of, if you think of the largest building around where you live, we would say, how do we know where you're at? And so all of these multi-telephone line systems started requiring us to have room numbers and floor numbers. Well, with the change from good old-fashioned copper lines to voice over internet protocol, the change was 2 years ago with Kerry's Law, you didn't have to dial the 9 to get to 911. And then there were some more required changes, Ray-Bombs Act, which there's a link to talk more about that made sure that we could have more of a dispatchable location. So instead of just saying third floor, we wanted something like third floor near office 123, or if it's a commonly known thing, third floor near the kitchen, so that we could get help faster. And what's happening is IT departments and whatnot are saying, hey, we have 3,000 people in our building. I'm being extreme here. We have 3,000 people in a building. We need everybody to make sure that they're updating their location information. If you don't, it's going to default to basic. And what happens with the basic is it doesn't come to your local 911 center. It may be going out of state to a regional center that helps you decide where you're at. Or quite by accident, the VoIP provider can give a 10-digit number, not 911, to potentially a 911 center, or quite by accident to a business line or a city or a county line that they think is the 911 center. And it could inadvertently have callers leaving messages on a voicemail, which would be completely disturbing if you need help. So bottom line is, if you can't get through to 911 on that multi-telephone line, pick up your cell phone, have somebody else call, but get to us so that we can help. And also know that even though I'm pushing on this, I want this dispatchable location, we're always going to ask you your location, and we're going to use this information to verify. So that's another key point.
Thank you very much, Leanne. And if you would stay on the call for some questions afterwards, that would be terrific. And now I see we have Rosemary Soto, who has joined in. We had to launch a little early, Rosemary, but we'll take you next because I know you need to step away. Tell us a little bit about the redistricting. First, there was census, now redistricting.
Hi, Maya. Thank you so much, and thank you for your patience. Yes, I did have the pleasure of working the 2020 census project, and once that completed, the 2020 census gathers the most recent, and it happens every 10 years, as we know, the most recent population data by not just as community, city, but across the nation, right? And that data helps to determine the apportionment for the Congress, as well as other elected seats within the state and counties and cities, especially when elections are done by districting, by districts. And so at this point, once that census count was completed, the next phase of that work is the redistricting process. And the census data, as we all know, has experienced some significant delays due to the pandemic and other contributing factors. And so we are late in starting the redistricting process. And there is a word on the street, I should say, that the deadline for completing the redistricting process might be moved into the next year. At this point, we don't know. It is still in discussion at the federal level. And so what we know for now, our deadline to complete the redistricting process is December 15th of this year, 2021. So we are working within that timeline. And the first step in the redistricting process is to form a commission that would help advise and help in the process to shape what those new maps would be like. And so at this point, that is where we are. We are seeking solicitation from community members who are interested in this work and want to become a part of the process. It is a significant commitment in terms of getting down in the weeds and working with us on this redistricting process. And it begins with also identifying what are the communities of interest within our county. And that detail and form of information will help us shape what each of the districts would look like by population and how much of it needs to change and in which way. So I will invite folks to help us get the word out in regards to the redistricting advisory commission that is currently in process. This is the website, and I'll put the link in the chat. This is a page that will tell us a whole lot about the basics about the redistricting process. And what you first see here is the application to become a candidate for the commission process. There will be a 15-member commission. 3 will be appointed representing each district, so a total of 15. And the appointment will be done by the board. And it is anticipated that once this solicitation process ends on June 28th, we would want to receive it by 5 p.m. on June 28th. then we will go ahead and begin to screen these applicants, and the supervisors will then review for appointment and for selection and appointment at that point. So we're anticipating by end of July we would have a commission already in place. So I'll stop sharing. That's in a nutshell what the redistricting process is starting to shape out to be. If there are any questions, I can take them in the chat or at your pleasure, Maya. Thank you.
And that would be the part about me unmuting. I wanted to ask you, but before you left, you might want to talk a little bit about how the community will be able to participate in the process once the commission has been established and they, make their plan. Will there be community involvement?
Yes, thank you so much, Maya. That is the most important part, and I'm sorry that I almost forgot about that. The community engagement is so critical. That is a process that the redistricting process engages the community significantly. There are actually some mandatory public hearings that will be held throughout the county, especially as we get closer to the deadline and finalizing the maps. But even before that, you can anticipate hearing from us some announcements of different community workshops or hearings that we will be holding, most likely to begin in August and run through about the end of November. And the big part of why we want to have those community engagement conversations is because we need to know what matters and what is most important to each of the residents, the community members in each district. So we will be holding a minimum of 2 public sessions in every district, but we can anticipate quite a lot more in each of the districts. Some will be in person, depending on how we are doing across the state with our public meetings, and then some, of course, will be held virtually, and perhaps there will be some that are a hybrid of both in person and virtual by Zoom. So definitely the community members' input is very important. It is how we would be able to best determine the way that the districts need to be remapped and reviewed. There is a term known as communities of interest, and what that references is to different communities within a county, within a district that would need to be, or that should be located within the same district or throughout. There are a few reasons why that's important, and that is to make sure that there is equal representation throughout the county within each of the districts. And so that is extremely important for us, and we'll be noting just about everything that we do in our website. So we want to invite the community to become engaged. Not only will you be able to attend these public hearings and provide comment to us, whether it be at these meetings or offline, we will also be using online interactive mapping tools. We are currently exploring which ones are going to work best for us here in our county. And you would be able to submit recommendations for how you think that your district should be mapped. You can select or give us recommendations by what streets should be a boundary, or what different parts of the neighborhood should be considered a part of which district. You will be able to create your own map, your own version of a map online, and submit it to us for consideration. And we won't necessarily have to use those tools. You can also just draw it on a piece of paper or in your own way, and you can submit it that way, and we will be required to evaluate them and consider them. So those are different ways in which you can get involved. You can connect with us directly, and on that webpage, there is an email address that is set aside specifically for the redistricting process. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, Rosemary, very much. And if you stay on as long as you can, we'll take questions. And if you have to leave, we'll forward questions to you. And now we're going to move on to our next topic. We're very pleased to have John Narici, who's president and general manager of WeatherTech Raceway Laguna Seca, who is going to share with us some of the updates about what's going on at the track. And there was some very exciting news at the Board of Supervisors yesterday with some racing coming back to the track. Good afternoon.
Good morning. Sorry I was a few minutes late. Hello, everybody. Yeah, there was some very exciting news. The board approved a 3-year agreement with IMSA, which if you've been in the county, you should recognize that name. They've been here for several years, both running in the spring and fall. For 21, they will run in September, a back-to-back, if you will, with IndyCar, and then our plan is to move them back to the spring, where frankly ticket sales are much more promising for them. But that pretty much tightens up the schedule for next year, meaning 21. We start out in July with Moto America, and then we follow up the following week with ARMA. Moto America is the Superbikes, the Speed Fest. And ARMA is vintage motorcycles. They've never been here before, but it's almost like the feeling you would get from our reunion event. Then in August, obviously the event that is owned by the county, we have the Rolex Monterey Motorsports Reunion, the pre and the major event in August. Then in September, we go into the IMSA, and followed by the IndyCar is coming back. And then a new event this year is Velocity Invitational, which is very much like our reunion, and they're dated for the month of November. So going into 21, thankfully out of COVID and the pandemic. And the good news is we are considered obviously an outside venue, so we're allowed 10,000 visitors a day. And at this time, the protocols or the requirements appear to be going away, although we will be recommending strongly the wearing of masks. We will keep all our signage up as it relates to social distancing and spacing. But as you know, this park is huge. Actually, it's over 500 acres in total. And not a lot of people use grandstands. They prefer to walk around and visit the paddock in the marketplace. So we're pretty excited about going into 21. Ticket sales are a bit soft right now, but main problem is everyone has talked about California on that June 15th date. And hopefully once it's official that we are back and open for business as a statewide for the state, our ticket sales will pick up and start hitting the levels that we saw back in 18 and 19. So that was the IMSA. And then the other portion of my presentation to the board yesterday, which had technical difficulties, if you watched, was kind of tough to do, but I got through it, was just an update on Laguna Seca. And I took over in January of 20. Obviously, 3 months into it, we all know what happened. So it's been a pretty challenging year, to say the least, for myself and my team here. But we've really focused on a couple main items. We've cleaned it up. We've done a fair amount of repairs out at Laguna Seca. And then I've also, from a business model, separated the park from the track. And I'm happy to report, as I did yesterday, because Laguna Seca, the camping in the park was just really used as a supplemental to events. Historically, everyone knew Laguna Seca as the racetrack. We're putting it out there as a park, a county-owned park that our citizens and our visitors can come and enjoy. And to date, based on 2019, camping revenue is actually up 49% over 2019 by simply marketing it as a premier location, so close to the wonderful destination of the Monterey Peninsula, to the Salinas Valley. So many things to do for families and activities for couples, what have you. And we're really marketing it as a brand all by itself. And it really appears to be paying off. The other big news is, if you read in the paper, back in June, and even when I took over the contract, the whole problems with the volunteers, the service organization, that's all been totally restructured. We now have the Laguna Seca Volunteer Association made up of over 200 truly loyal members of Laguna Seca, not of John Nareed, you're the team here, but they just love the park, the racing and the track. We have over 20 service clubs signed up. We have the wonderful Aptos Veterans Post coming back, the VFWs as they call themselves. So we're pretty excited about what this year may bring. It will be the first year for me coming out of 40 years in the hotel business of putting on major events. So I can't say I'm calm, cool, and collect. I'm a bit on the nervous side, but we're pretty excited to get people out here. And the other big drive, probably the third priority in all of this, is really getting our community back associated with Laguna Seca. Over the years, being in the community as long as I have been now, it's about 29 years. The community, I think, lost interest in Laguna Seca. And that's sad because it's a golden asset, as I call it. The views up here are beautiful. It's a great place to ride your bike, run. We're opening up a go-kart program up here. We hope to get that up and running as soon as we get our helmets in. But, the community needs to get up here and really take a look at what this beautiful park has to offer. Because first of all, it's a park. Secondly, it's a racetrack. And that's kind of how we're pushing this as one of the key destinations. It really provides tremendous economic impact into the county from direct spend from our events, from the tax that it's generated. We're really attempting to re-energize is probably a really good word. And I'm very thankful for the support of county staff. I've worked with many, and also the Board of Supervisors. They were very complimentary of the direction. I got a 4-0 vote on IMSA, and only because the chair was gone, I'm not sure how she would have voted. So it was a good day yesterday for Laguna Seca Recreational Area.
Let me ask you, based on your past history in the hotel industry, what have your former colleagues or your current colleagues in the industry saying about the return of all these events and how it's going to impact, the re-energizing of their businesses as well?
Yeah, they are very excited. I'll tell you what's a real challenge for hospitality. They have no staff. We're having a tough time filling spots. So as they want to see their occupancies up, their restaurants and bars full, they're very concerned about the lack of staff. And they have been trying now for some time. But as we all know, they were pretty much closed down for 15 months. And with the cost of living in Monterey County, most of them, hospitality professionals, no matter what job they may hold, that is their profession. It's usually a husband and wife team or a household that all works in the business. Same thing that happened to me in the recession when I was in the business. They pack their cars and head to a state that is opened up because that's their only means of earning a living. So they are very excited, and we've stretched it out. We've never had an event in November. We have doubled up. So all of our events this year are back-to-backs, one week after another. We've kind of planned it that way. It's less expense for the operation out here as it relates to tents and certain services that are required. But they should be thankful. And it all also kind of depends where they are with allowing group business to come back, because the fall season, August, September, October are huge group months for hoteliers. And right now that's still kind of, I think, a little bit in limbo as to what the state's going to allow, and then the county, of course.
All right. Thank you very much, John. If you could stay on the line in case we have any questions for you after our next presenter, that would be terrific.
You bet. Thank you. I'll be here.
Thank you. Great. And then last but not least, we have Dr. Moreno, who's going to join us from Public Health with some information and a COVID update. Dr. Moreno, are you with us?
Yeah. Hi, Mia. Good afternoon. So I really don't have any announcements today from Public Health.
Okay, terrific. So if there are any questions, that come in for Dr. Moreno, we will forward them. Actually, if you don't mind, we'll just go ahead then and start with questions because I've got one coming in for you, Dr. Moreno. So perfect timing.
Mhm.
So first question, Dr. Moreno, the 29% vaccination rate for 12 to 17-year-olds in Monterey County seems paltry. Ideally, what number should that be at this point?
I think we really need to focus our efforts in trying to get as many teenagers vaccinated as possible. I think that's really what we're working on. And so we'll continue to try to get vaccine over to our those vaccine providers that historically have been vaccinating kids for school entry, for example, and do the best we can to get them the vaccine in whatever, the Pfizer vaccine in particular, in whichever dose total amount we can get to them, either through a direct order from the manufacturers, or if we need to, we can look to redistribute smaller amounts of vaccines that are smaller amounts that come are smaller than the standard packaging that the manufacturers have. So I really think we need to we have more work to do. So we'll try to vaccinate as many as we can.
Right, thank you. And then the next question is also for you. How many deaths in Monterey County that had been attributed to COVID-19 were later removed from the count because it was later determined the victims had not died as a direct result of COVID-19?
Yeah, I don't know how many individuals that were initially reported as deaths that were later not included as deaths. So I don't know that we track that, probably not. And that's because it's part of a cleanup process that's, again, standard EPI reporting procedures for for COVID, as well as many of our other reportable diseases, sexually transmitted infections, hepatitis, for example. And so as a process, we look and to see if a death meets the particular criteria that's established to qualify as a death. We also look to see if the person actually was a Monterey County resident. Some people who passed away were assigned to Monterey County, and when we investigate, we find out that the person really wasn't a Monterey County resident, maybe a Santa Cruz County resident. So we remove that as well, and we move on. So I don't think we have that information, but there's a variety of reasons why someone might have been initially reported as a fatality, and turns out they're not a Monterey County COVID related fatality.
All right, thank you. And the next question is also for you. How much has I'm going to break this up into two. This is a longer question. How much has the demand for getting a COVID-19 vaccination dropped in Monterey County, and what could be done to get those numbers back up?
So I think, I don't know how much it has dropped. We're not really tracking, that's not really a metric. What we do know is we are tracking, or the state is tracking, how many individuals in Monterey County have received at least one dose. So we have that information on our website. The other thing is, I think we should remember that we're at a different place in the pandemic than we were when vaccine was first available. So when vaccine was first available, the demand exceeded the availability and supply of vaccines. So that was a very different time during the pandemic response than we're in now. So at this point, many of those people have already been vaccinated. And so now we have a smaller number of more people vaccinated than unvaccinated, and the people that remain unvaccinated. We still have some people who would like to get vaccinated but aren't sure, or would like to get vaccinated and are requesting additional help to get vaccinated. And then, of course, we'll have some individuals that have at this point decided they're not going to get vaccinated. So we're at a very different place. So I think the county's communications working group has been trying to be flexible throughout this pandemic to identify those where we're at and what populations and what messages would be most appropriate. So that's ongoing work to try to at least get through messaging and outreach people who are inclined but haven't yet gotten vaccinated, to get them vaccinated, and also working with other vaccine providers to get vaccine to places that are most convenient for those who are inclined to but haven't gotten vaccinated yet.
Thank you. And then the second part of the question was that the proportion of Monterey County residents 12 years of age and older who have received at least one dose of COVID-19 vaccine stands at 63% and has been around that percentage for the last few weeks. How does that compare to other counties in California? Is Monterey County doing better than other counties?
That information is on the state website, so I encourage people on this call to go to the state website, and they can look to see how the percentage of individuals vaccinated across the state by county, how they compare. So that's what I would suggest. But overall, I think we're close to the state average in terms of the percentage of individuals that receive at least one dose of COVID vaccine.
All right, and then another question for you. What will California and Monterey County look like after June 15th, certainly the much anticipated reopening?
Yeah, I think we'll have to, I can't predict what it's going to, basically what life will look like, but I do know that we are still waiting for some additional guidance to come out from the state that will most likely align the state with CDC guidance. At least that's what the California Department of Public Health staff have been telling us.
Right, and then another question for you. There is still a bit of confusion when it comes to mask and social distancing requirements after June 15th. Where exactly will we still need masks, and what businesses need to require them?
Yeah, so I do understand we are getting close to June 15th, Maya, but I do anticipate that there'll be some additional guidance coming out from the state. So I would, we'll probably need to wait for that and see what the state sends out in terms of guidance, and then we can go from there.
All right, thank you. That is all the questions that I have in chat. Are there any other questions for any of our participants today? Waiting a second here. I see none coming in. That will then wrap up our briefing for today. Thanks everyone for taking part. Great information out today. Our next media briefing will be next week, next Wednesday. We'll see you then.